from Nick again. And Nick will be accompanied afterwards by Miss Judith Mok, poet, author, and classical singer. Judith has published 8 books of novels and poetry. They've been translated into Dutch and English. She's received numerous awards and nominations for her work, which is widely anthologized. Her singing career is legendary, and she has performed for us several times here in this space, most recently for the Sephardic presentation in conjunction with the opening of this exhibit on Jewish languages. She treated us to the beautiful sounds of medieval Ladino songs. Also, her one-woman show, co-written by her husband, I believe, Michael O'Loughlin. Molly Says No. Written by Michael, based on Molly Bloom, Ulysses' character, has also received huge praise on the major international stages. So I'll let Judith introduce when she is going to sing later what she's going to sing. But just to let you know that Judith will be having a performance in St. Anne's Church in Dawson Street on the 13th of December with Glenn Hansard as a benefit, isn't it right?
Yes,
at 7:30.
Simon Community. For
the Simon Community at 7:30 on the 13th of December. So thank you, Nick, and then Judith.
Thanks. So klezmer music is usually played by more than one person.
Oh,
So I'm going to ask you to help me. Then I might stay in time for this one. If you wouldn't mind just giving me like a... Oh, he's catchy. That's good.
So jolly piece to read. I would actually like to read you a snippet of my next book, which is called The State of Dark, which is hopefully coming out next year. And it's actually non-fiction, and it's a memoir about my family. It's not so much about me. Well, this piece is just a little bit about me. My father was a leading poet in Holland and connected to a lot of European writers and musicians and so on before the war already. My parents lost 194 members of their family, and the book is not so much about the pain as about the entire culture that has been destroyed. My maternal grandfather, for example, brought Gustav Mahler over to Holland and had his symphonies played. Which I think is a pretty incredible achievement. This is about Vienna, where I studied, and the Südbahnhof is where the Russian Jews who were let out of Russia in the 1970s and 80s, finally because they were persecuted in Russia and had a terrible time, arrived. And I'm using a German word, which is Handsemmel, which is just a little bread that was made by hand that I like very much. Oh, I always ate that in Vienna. At 7 in the morning, I look up at the soot-covered roof of the Südbahnhof, feeling warm in my coat and chewing on a Handsemmel. I don't know exactly why I seem to have followed myself to this place. This building was constructed around 1840, and nothing much seems to have been done to it since. Even the crows that are picking at invisible bits of food on the cracked platform seem ancient and blacker than I have ever noticed one. There are hardly any trains coming in from or going out into this dark winter morning. Melted snow drips on empty carriages. Porters rattle their carts in expectation of a load. This is an end station. No trains can rush by and make you dream in the split second it whooshes by of undiscovered destinations. Slowly the snow and dirt-covered train enters the station. Soot-covered windows, no faces or movement noticeable inside the compartments. But when the doors finally open, entire families burst onto the platform where I stand. I stand there, waiting, and suddenly realize, feeling that lightness in my head and a heartbeat in my stomach, as if I'm expecting to meet people I have not seen in a long time, people close to me. Nobody notices me, pushing and pulling at their badly tied up luggage, dressed in hard wool and rough shoes, small children with faces swollen from tiredness, all move as fast as they can towards the buses that will bring them to the airport, to freedom in the United States or Israel. Did I think the same ones would come back that I heard so much about? Why this irrational feeling of excitement when I know that most of these people would be dead by now anyway? Or was I just hoping for a joyous crowd of travelers that maybe would greet me on their way to a better future? Not this grey mass of humans who look as if they have had to dig themselves out of a prison and who rush with bitter determination towards the unknown, something to live for. When the crows resume their picking, I wander out of there, back to music. Then, speaking about Vilnius, we were there a few years ago working, and we noticed that the whole Jerusalem of the North is gone. The streets are gone. There's one synagogue left. The synagogues have been, everything has been erased completely. And where the big synagogue was, which was built underground because it wasn't allowed to be higher than the buildings, there's a little playground now. It's as if there was never anything there. And the statue that used to be the statue of Karl Marx has been turned into a statue of the Goan, who was the wisest and most well-known rabbi in Vilnius. Playgrounds. Vilnius. Seesaw underneath your statue. We don't know that the new regime pulled on the old mask of Karl Marx to reveal your wise eyes shining through the black stone. We, the children who are condemned to play with the ghosts of those children who walked our homeland's woods, climbing, hanging, our hands slipping through their hands on the bars of the rack to fall flat on the moving ground. A synagogue hidden underneath the sand pit, 3 floors down. Why would we know? Why should we care? which religion might bury us. We get onto the merry-go-round and turn to be happy. Our mothers are goddesses of blonde and blue, walking the streets with strange names like Jew Street. And here it is, in 2016, that somewhere we heard a war is killing children like us. The big erasers are dropped from planes now, nothing like Vilnius. History is carved out here in new images, just like the statue of Marx was transformed into you, the Goan, the enlightened one. When the light drops and the cold catches our breath in clouds, we kick at leaves and sticks in search of a mysterious object, maybe the old bones of a fairy tale, to find nothing. Thank you.
Our last poet of the afternoon is Michael O'Loughlin. Michael is poet, author, critic, and translator. His work has received many awards, including the Patrick and Catherine Kavanagh Fellowship Award. He's been writer-in-residence in Galway City and County, as well as writer-fellow at Trinity College in Dublin. In 2011, his work In This Life was published, and we welcome Michael to read to us this afternoon. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow. A few years ago, well, many years ago, I went to live in Amsterdam, and one of the first houses I lived in was a canal house not far from the Anne Frank Museum, and a very similar kind of house. So this poem kind of comes from that experience, and it starts with a quote from Ludwig von Wittgenstein, the Austrian philosopher. What we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence. Anne Frank. Life is lived in rooms like this. That at least we can say. And people come and go on unspeakable missions, clear commands. And we can talk and smother the air with words till we feel we understand. In these rooms we sleep and dream and rise to breakfast on white linen. There are books to read, and at night the scratch of pen and paper. Life is lived in rooms like this, where we lean towards a square of light. But where the walls are, we can only discover by walking out into that darkness, fingers outstretched, blind, knowing we have no words for what we may find. I enjoyed that lovely talk by David Goldberg about Yehuda Amichai. I wasn't going to read this poem, but I'm going to read it now because he mentioned Yehuda Halevi, the Spanish Jewish poet who lived about 1,000 years ago, and he also mentioned Paul Celan. And both of these people are mentioned in this poem, so I have to read it. It's called The Cormorant, and it's set in this area. When we came to live here about 10 years ago, one of the first things we noticed was that occasionally a cormorant would come up from the harbour and join the swans on the canal. And there's a bit of a competition between myself and Judith to write a poem about the cormorant, but I won. Got there first. And I couldn't help noticing how strange it is that, as has been mentioned already, so many of the Jews who lived in this area originated from what is now Lithuania. And of course now we have a new wave of Lithuanian immigrants in Dublin. And the other thing that caused me to write the poem was a few years ago, Solly Marcus and his father, Louis, were walking down a street in Temple Bar.
The other way around.
The other way around, sorry. And a kid shouted at them, why don't you just go back to Lithuania? And as Solly remarked wonderingly, how did they know? So it's called The Cormorant. And it starts with a quote from Judith Mok. "My heart is in the east, but I am in the west." Hard to believe that these were once an emblem of the soul. These big creaking machines whose shit and drool fouls the towpath where I walk. Like a new tribe in from the Amazon jungle, they live on the city's margins, begging for stale bread. They have no fear, and without fear, there is no wonder. On weekends and holidays, the immigrants flock to feed them, taking photos of their children with the swans. They send back to Russia, to Lithuania, from where 150 years ago, their neighbours flew out of a Chagall painting to end up here, in the red brick nests of Dublin's Little Jerusalem. Half a dozen streets, 11 synagogues, one for every village in their corner of that Slavic swamp, where they had built a huge virtual landing pad on which the Messiah could land at any moment, like Pope John Paul in the Phoenix Park, descending in his gleaming white chopper. I rise early on my birthday to watch the sun on the Wicklow Alps. From this glass room, like the bridge of a ship moored canal side. From the street, our friends look up to see us perform on the family stage. The swans are there below as usual, quietly beginning another day's work, when suddenly out of the east, like the wandering Jew, comes a cormorant, black as the flag which filled Paul Celan with such ecstasy, flying above the barricades in Paris '68. Dead centre, a yard above the water, he threads the canal through the city. The swans ignore him as he passes through and just above them, and, without an inch of deviation, flies right under the arch of Harold's Cross Bridge, dragging my heart with him. The poet Michael Longley was in Portobello here visiting us once. He's an expert on flora and fauna, and he pointed out that they're not cormorants, they're shags. But I think a poem called The Shag might lead to wrong expectations. I'll just read one short poem that's it's called Talith. And we have a talith at home, a prayer shawl, and it's probably one of the last taliths in Portobello. And the poem tells the story of how it came to be here. Sorry. Talith. We sleep beneath your grandfather's talith. Fine lamb's wool striped black and white. A giant barcode to be scanned by God. The pelt of a fabulous beast. Little tent, portable temple. It survived Dutch looters and Dublin landlords to shelter in this Irish night even me, uncircumcised and all too often unwashed. Your father pinned it to his study wall, a flag without a shield, eternity's quilt. Your grandfather didn't think he'd need it when he took the train in Amsterdam. And what, he mocked your father, are they going to murder us all? Thank you.
Je voudrais tant que tu te souviennes des jours heureux où nous étions amis. En ce temps-là, la vie était plus belle et le soleil plus brûlant qu'aujourd'hui. Les feuilles mortes se ramassent à la peine. Tu vois, je n'ai pas oublié. Les feuilles mortes se ramassent à la peine.
It was a very rich banquet of wonderful words and sounds and melodies, and thank you so much to our guests this afternoon. Simon Lewis, David Goldberg, Judith Mok, Michael O'Loughlin, Nick Roth, and Johnny Taylor. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank you. And it's a very special thank you to Judith, who really was instrumental, pardon the pun, in getting our musicians to come here today. I hope it's not the last time that you're coming here. Thank you very much. There are some light refreshments downstairs for those of you who wish to look around the museum. And for those of you who it is their first visit here, may I have a special welcome for you and hope that you come back another day. We're open every Sunday. If you'd like to spend more time, there's a lot to see in the museum. You need a lot of time to absorb it all. So thank you very much for coming this afternoon.